You're listening to a Countout Podcast. Countout provides a wide variety of bonus content that is right at your fingertips. On the Countout Patreon, our podcasts are creating bonus content exclusively for you, their listener. For only $5 a month, you can watch instant reactions to major shows, watch-alongs, early access to main feed podcasts, some fun goof and gag audio, plus shows from some of the podcasters' outside interests. It's the best way to experience all that the Countout Network has to offer. So head on down to patreon.com/countout to take part in some of the best and most fun content wrestling has to offer. Again, that is patreon.com/countout. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Ring Post Radio. We have a special sort of bonus episode here for you today. So we're very excited to have Justin Knipper here from Pro Wrestling Noah, the overseas PR rep for Pro Wrestling Noah, a staff writer for the Wrestling Observer, and of course, always joined by Scotty. I don't know why I gave him second billing, but it's fine. He's still here as well. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this special episode. We're excited to talk to Justin. We're very much excited to have you here. So thank you, Justin, for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I'll throw it over to Scotty first. Scotty, I'll let you get the first question.
Yeah, so I've heard you talk about this on, with Mike and JD a little bit, but I kind of...
those two troublemakers. They're going to get me in trouble one day.
No, it was a good thing. It was a good thing. So obviously, with the way Japanese wrestling is coming out of COVID, and obviously COVID's not gone, but, we're in greener pastures now, and with Muto retiring... I want to ask you a bit about, Noah's decision to start working with New Japan and All Japan, and why was now especially the right time? And I'll toss Dragon Gate in there too, because they've been working with Dragon Gate for quite a while now.
Well, I can't speak to the Dragon Gate relationship because, like you said, there's always been a little bit of a connection with some of the guys backstage, and I think Eita's been with the company pretty regularly for the past year or so. But as far as New Japan goes, well. There are a couple of ways, angles you can think about it. The big angle or perspective that you can take in this sense is that, especially from both the people in the industry and fans of the industry in Japan, they're talking about the feeling of a post-Muto world. And what Muto Final did in February, it wasn't just Muto's retirement match, but it fell and functioned like the official end of that Heisei, a little bit of Showa era from the late 80s into pretty much now. And Muto was one of the only active characters. When I say active, I mean people who were still wrestling regularly as an act, not as some wrestlers stick around for a long time, but they end up being more of supplemental, helping out. They're on cards and the opening of the events. But what Muto Final did was it really sealed it for everybody. Everybody felt like, okay, that golden era of pro wrestling in Japan, it is over. And we gave Muto his flowers, and we got to celebrate Chono, celebrate Hashimoto and Misawa all in one shot, even though they couldn't be there themselves. It was very meaningful, symbolic event and moment for a lot of that. And the idea, to come back to your question, Scott, working together to try and build back pro wrestling in Japan to where it once was 20, 30 years ago. Now, that's not this rigid plan. It's more like the spirit in the air. The only way to keep this boat afloat is to all work together. Because if you go down, we're all going down. You know what I mean? Right. It's that kind of thinking. The other take on this is a lot of the people that I work for in the office at Noah, they came from New Japan years ago. And a lot of the people that I work with, they were part of the team that launched the whole Bushiroad era, New Japan World, that whole pivot that New Japan took are a lot of the same players that are working for Noah now. And this is as of like 2020 when Cyber Agent got involved and Cyber Fight kicked off. It was more around that time. So not only is it just good for the general public, it's just good for pro wrestling.
Yeah.
Where we are competing, but it's not like Manifest Destiny or something like people think of it over here. It's more like, it's just how it's got to be, working together. But also there is that back door between Noah and New Japan. And also you have to remember that New Japan is primarily owned and run by Bushiroad, but TV Asahi has a big part in that. And TV Asahi also has a small stake in Abema Digital Television, which is the company that produces Noah. So you've probably seen, they're actually on the Fight channel, the Abema Fight channel. They've even shown New Japan programming in the past. You could get the pay-per-view earlier this year. It was the New Japan Noah, the January show, Congo versus LIJ kind of thing. Yeah. And Wrestle Kingdom before that. So there is that back door too. It's not like, I don't know. I feel like some people, especially fans, when they talk online about it, it's like they're informed only by that Monday Night Wars documentary. And I mean, it's cool. It's great programming, but I'm telling you, it's not like everybody's out to get each other. It's
right.
It's business. And the way that business works is if you can, the hardest thing about making things work in wrestling and in business in general is how can we get a win-win situation? That's harder to do than nothing. And it's harder to do than having a deal that's one-sided. And I think right now, I think it's just good for the landscape. The day-to-day is always different, like in any other profession, but there's like a healthy and exciting pathway that's opened. It's not something that all the companies are going to depend on, but it's cool to have that as the landscape in Japan right now. Sorry, that was a little bit of a long-winded answer, but
it was perfect. It was a perfect answer. No, I agree that like the Monday Night Wars, I think at least for American fans, has clouded a lot of promotional quote unquote rivalries, and they just assume that every promotion is out to get each other and it's all cutthroat. And as you describe, it's more of like there's not a huge thing, but there's like a financial tie-in sort of between all these companies in Japan a little bit more. Talking about that as well, talking about how, Muto has retired and sort of that coming out of that pandemic, do you see the relationship with these companies lasting longer or flourishing and growing more? Or do you think Noah or some of these other companies may get to a point where, I think, Noah's like, oh, we're ready to go full steam ahead with our brand new stars and international talent. We're ready to go. We don't need Dragon Gate anymore. Is that something that you think that Noah might be interested in flourishing relationships more or backing it down at some point?
I don't think it's something that's as conscious as that, as much as it's like in Noah, I guess compared with New Japan, for example, it's a lot more fluid in terms of booking. And, if something's good for business, let's do it. And it's less about like exclusivity to company, because the idea of like using wrestlers who aren't under contract on your show in Japan, it's not like as taboo, I guess, as it's been here. I guess it's always been a part of wrestling in Japan, and it always factors into like the storytelling of a match. So I think it's like, the doors are open for business, no forbidden doors. If it's like, let's have some great wrestling. And I think that's the approach. So I don't think there's any plan to like, go full on WWE and ice out contracts and things like that. I think it's better. And it's better. And it's also like just more of the way that things are. There's no like you can appear on Abema, but you can appear on other channels too. So it's not like back in the 90s where there are those 90-day freeze outs where you couldn't appear on TV. It's just the rules are different now because the platforms are different. But I can't give like a clear answer, but I think, if something's working and if it's cool and if it works for everybody, why not? And I think that's just my philosophy in general. Let's do business.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of being cool, I want to go right into this because I want to know your thoughts on this because to me, I think it was the best story, at least to kick off the year in pro wrestling. Obviously, Kaito Kiyomiya and Kazuchika Okada was really the story. I think I saw a lot of people call it the feud of the year at that point, and we didn't even get the match yet. It was just that brawl at the Wrestle Kingdom in Yokohama Arena show just pretty much changed everything. That was the match at the Muto show everyone was most looking forward to. And altogether again, by the time this interview comes out, has already happened. So I'm sure they they focused on that. Kiyomiya was very open about that. He said, I'm only looking at Okada. No one else is there with me. How do you feel that has helped, or do you feel it's helped Kiyomiya more than hurt him? Because I know a lot of people are like, well, he lost, and Okada beat him. Okada's the biggest star right now in New Japan, so it's not. To me, it was always that's a great thing because I know they'll come back to it. It feels like they have to come back to it.
For those who are bothered by a pro wrestler losing in a pro wrestling match, I don't know what to say. Like, listen, I'm going to say, I would say with about 99.5% certainty that what you saw in February is a sliver of a program that's probably going to go 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
I'm not saying that I don't have any knowledge of anything, but the booking was clear, and in Japan, it's still based on the long-term booking, and there's no in the States, especially with young fans, we're so conditioned to week-to-week television booking. What's going to happen next? What's going to happen next weekend? What's going to happen on Friday? Because that's going to lead into what's going to happen on the pay-per-view on Sunday. Yeah. Like, there's a really fast pace, and people want definitive stories. They want answers. They want open and close, move on to the next. It's just not the nature of things over there. So creatively, I thought that the booking and the match at Tokyo Dome, I thought it was genius.
I did too.
I don't. It's hard to explain, but something like that. Okay, it might bum some people out over here, but in Japan, him losing in that fashion really fired people up for Kiyomiya.
Yeah,
it's that's when it comes down to a big cultural difference. If we want to get a little off into the weeds here and get a little wax philosophical,
go for it.
I think, okay, very much so. As someone who's lived as an expat for a good amount of my life, both in Japan and Europe and here, in America, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that in all of us is instilled this idea. The great Ricky Bobby said, if you're not first, you're last. That is a really, really, it's so apparent. And when I see people talk about wrestling like that in just a simple win-loss kind of way, if you lose, you are a loser. If you win, you are a winner, which is it's so far from the thinking of it's so far from sports psychology in Japan. For example, Kenta Kobashi, we all know him. We all love him. He's one of the greatest of all time. He lost his 61st. He lost 60 matches before he could even win a match when he started out, before he could change his tights to those orange tights. And by the time he won, the guy was figuratively on fire. He was not literally on fire. But doing your best, giving it your all is way more valued than a win or a loss in Japan. And it's not just in it's not just wrestling. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Koshien high school baseball tournament in Japan, but it's I don't know what to compare it to, but it'd be like March Madness here, I guess. It's a high school baseball tournament, the best teams in the country. It's usually like people stop working to see the final match or game match. Listen to me. And the losing teams cry so much. I mean, and you see the people in the crowd, it's like their dreams are shattered, but that gives the fans, they feel so much sympathy for those players, especially if they're young. So the idea of like losing a great game in your youth, it's such a it's like a special experience to have, and it's really admired by a lot of fans. And I think Kiyomiya is absolutely the perfect person to do this. He's only 26 years old. Yeah. Holy moly. So by the time he's 30, so I am so happy and confident where all of that is leading. And I know this will be released after altogether again, but I expect those two to have a feisty and fiery showdown standoff. And those two are so good that they can honestly just stare at each other and get a huge reaction. When I was calling the Tokyo Dome show, we were positioned near like the PA. So if the ring is here and there's like 4 sides you can be on, we were like all the seats in the back, and then there was like all the electric, like the PA, and they're running the monitors and us. And when Okada was walking down that long ramp, he was walking, he stopped, he just looked over at our section of the crowd, and the whole section just went, woo! It was like magic. The dude's amazing. The dude has that's presence. Like he just shot a look at people and they were electrified. So if Okada is in it, if Kiyomiya is in it, let them do their thing. I trust them so fully with whatever they're going to do. I think back to the original question, it's a great way of building a story without you have stars, but it's just not like the 90s. 60,000 in the Tokyo Dome. It's just probably not going to happen, especially with the setups that they have now.
Yeah.
With all the monitors. But Japanese wrestling, I believe, is in good hands. So
I agree with that.
Sort of going off what you just said there, I'm going to go off the page a little bit, Scotty. Do you find that sort of like American philosophy of winning versus losing is tough in your field of being like the overseas PR person for Noah? Like, do you think like it's hard do you find it challenging to try to like sell the idea of like, hey, America, it's not always about that. It's about, you can look good in defeat. It's not always about losing. Do you find that sort of challenging for you?
It's an interesting question. Yes, but I get discouraged, but also I've been to Japan. I know how it works. Yeah. And it's not a Japanese thing at the root. It's a human thing.
I agree.
Sure.
Agreed.
I think that's that's why it's, we're talking about it right now. A bunch of American guys talking about Japanese pro wrestling, because at the root, you can sell this to anybody because it sells itself. Mm-hmm. I mean, the match that just happened a couple hours ago, Nakajima and Kano, come on. Like, that's the stuff that makes my job easy.
Yeah.
It's easy to get behind that because it's awesome. But yeah, there's definitely like, I see like the pushback, and we need to do a better job of explaining what I'm talking about right now on commentary and our videos. I really want to go harder explaining, not over explaining the stories, but just giving people enough of the context to really enjoy it. It's like enjoying it in black and white TV versus HD. Mm-hmm. And it's Japanese culture in general is like a very high context culture. Yeah, so it's very detail oriented. I get if you want to just kick back, throw on some wrestling, there's tons of products that can please anybody. You don't have to engage that much. As an American, I guess you might be asking more of a fan. To a lot of the hardcore fans seem to do a lot of legwork too in diving into the stories, looking through footage, trying to figure out how I feel something, but articulating it in English isn't. It's harder, but it's discouraging. But it's a good challenge because I don't think it's that far away. I think it just needs. We need practice in watching as fans, and it needs to be presented, I feel, in a certain way. I mean, the difference I feel between New Japan and Noah, I feel that New Japan has always been more of an international stage that's based in Japan that I rank right along AEW, WWE, where Noah is there too, but its product is hard-hitting Japanese pro wrestling that can offer lucha libre, that can offer stars from around the world, but the main product, I mean, this is discussions that I've had with my people. It's like did you ever heard the term cement? It's more of a Japanese term, but it's basically like not shoot, but just hard hitting.
Yeah.
Hard hitting, more along the line. It was used for things like UWFI, UWF, and so on. That's cement, hard hit. Absolutely. Perfect example of that, Scott. Absolutely. And that's a style. I was talking to somebody and I was saying that there was that Kenny Ospreay match.
Yeah.
That was this year, yeah? I'm like,
yeah, so it was this year. It's hard to believe.
It's crazy. And in its own, it was so its own thing. They do their own thing. It's kind of transcending pro wrestling into their own. They're doing something that's theirs.
Yeah.
And in that sense, Kano and Nakajima did just that, but with a different vocabulary. They were using different riffs. It's a different flavor, but I think they're the only ones who can do that.
Yeah.
And I think, it's kind of like, to get back to the question, there's only so much explaining you can do after a while. And sometimes you got to really you have to go all in on the wrestlers and let them prove what I'm saying. I can talk all day, but if the guys aren't good or the girls aren't good, there has to be that element. And that's like the realness of Noah and the realness of really good wrestling is that there is that unspoken, but like internal feeling of this is special. I don't know exactly why. I'm enjoying it. I can sit here and analyze it, but there's a feeling I'm getting in my stomach that's just like, I want to go crazy. I want to scream. I want to fucking excuse me.
You're fine.
I'll cut myself off there. So.
Well, yeah, I think I'm with you there, and I think that's why we have maybe a greater appreciation for certain matches over others because of that realness to it. I always point when it comes to Noah, the Kiyomiya Muto match from last year. I feel like if you as a fan weren't willing to put the work in to understand that match, it doesn't hit you the same as if you're just a wrestling fan who watches wrestling matches.
Absolutely.
It's the work that Noah put in to make that match feel so special. That's why I loved it so much. So I think you definitely check the box there. And when talking about Kano and Nakajima, that is the only duo you could put out there for 45 minutes in Shinjuku Face of all places, and everyone's going to be roaring for all 45 minutes because it's going to be that cement, like you said. It's going to be just unbelievable violence, and at the end, you're like, all right, what's the next chapter of this? Because they just keep telling stories each time.
There were a lot of details in that match too. Unfortunately, there wasn't commentary on it at all, but there were a lot of little details in the beginning from Nakajima wearing the Congo shirt and then folding it up and giving it back to Kano. It really, if you're a martial arts fan in general and understand the dojo lifestyle, it's powerful in that regard too. It felt like martial arts as well. Yeah, I mean, having that context and like the Muto Kiyomiya match that you mentioned from last year was like almost entirely like everything was connected to something that had happened in the past.
Yep.
From the moves to I tried to use this move last time, but I'm going to try something else this time. And there's a connection to it, but it's not as verbal as American wrestling. North American wrestling especially. Minus Lucha Libre, that's its own flavor too, and that's a different discussion. But it's so verbal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, too, I wanted to mention this. What I thought was amazing about Nakajima and Kano was for almost 10 minutes, they didn't take a bump.
Yeah.
There were no, but they started taking bumps almost 10 minutes into the match. I think the first 5 minutes they barely touched. And it was just it was one of the most compelling parts of the matches. If I haven't said it already, everybody, please go out of your way and watch it on Wrestle Universe because it's amazing. It really is amazing, though. It truly is, and I'm excited about it. So you got me at a good time.
Yeah, they're a fantastic tandem, Nakajima and Kano. Like every match that they've had in their series has been fantastic. Every single one. It's like the moment I see like them on the card together, it's like, all right, here we go. Let's strap in, baby. Let's get going.
Yeah,
I always love seeing stuff like that.
I can watch them kick each other's chests in for 45 minutes, 60 minutes. They've done it all. That's the fun part. They've done both of those now. Their N1 final from I think it was 2 years ago now is one of my favorite Noah matches ever. One of my favorites. Because
that's in the other room. I have the cover of the Weekly Pro Wrestling with Keno on that cover.
That match made me
when he won the anyway.
Yeah,
it was great. There were and you know it was tough when the changeover happened because of the pandemic. Because there were a lot of cool plans, but everything changed because of that. So because of the restrictions were just the pandemic restrictions were just kind of stripped away for the most part, at least when you're going through the airport just this month in May. Yeah. So that's another thing that it's. The country's not on pace with other countries in terms of that, so that's going to affect certain things. Also, the economy in Japan right now has like the yen has never been lower in my experience. On the plus side, if you're an American wrestling fan, a lot of cheap merchandise. Go to TotoCon, but yeah, that's also factoring in too. So I mean, a sold out house means a lot, especially at Tokyo Dome was on a Tuesday. It's 30,000. It can happen, but it has to be with the right people. Yeah. Merit counts a lot when it comes to pro wrestling in Japan.
It does. I can only imagine what the legends of now what they'll do.
I'll probably start a steakhouse or ramen shop. They often do.
Well, we started talking about that already, about the Post-Muto retirement show, the final show there. What sort of went into that show for you on your side of things?
I was hired by the company just about a year ago-ish. Yeah. And after that was initially announced as retirement tour or whatever we call it, it was...
The final bye-bye tour?
Yeah. Anything that needed to be. Oh, go ahead. I mean, because I just did everything that they asked me to. It wasn't just it. There were from setting up interviews to plugs and promos to local promos to like in LA to just it was such a whirlwind. And I can tell you guys after it was after January 22nd, the Sting and Darby show.
Yeah.
Yes.
That is when I felt like I felt so I've never felt so burnt out in my life. Actually, I felt, and it was like my idea was to go to Tokyo Dome and do some wrangling for Noah backstage, but to really enjoy the work that I did for the past year. I've been working on it every day for forever. I want to see this at least. I get to the country, I get to the airport, and I get asked to do commentary. I go, what? I never done it before.
You did a great job.
Thank you.
I know people who specifically said you did the best job, and I was like, I don't think from any time I've talked to him, I don't even think he does commentary. So it was impressive that you just were right on there. I was like, when they said Justin Knipper, I was like, wait a minute.
That's what I said.
What a show, though, huh?
The other guys didn't know until the day before. I didn't meet Stu until like that day.
Wow.
It was really, it's not as meticulous as some other companies when it comes to that. The one thing that we should know, though, I don't know how clear it is, but Wrestle Universe handles the English commentary, and Abema does the Japanese side of all the production and the commentary. That's why they had like 8 celebrities. They had Takeru from K1. They had like Rina Matsuki. She's like a huge influencer, and Liger, Tanahashi, Chono, all these. They get all the cool people. On the other side, it's me. Sorry, bummer. So there is that. That's another thing that people. It's hard to understand. It's just I have a lot of bosses, or there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, for better or for worse, because there's a lot of different, like, so Wrestle Universe is its own entity under Cyber Agent, but then there's Abema, and then there's the Noah people. So it's like, it's a lot of moving parts. So I think that's one of the things that makes it different. Where I think in indies over here, or even companies over here, generally speaking, you could call your colleague up and go, "Hey, how about this?" And you go, "Okay, that sounds great. Let's do it." Bang, that's it.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more oversight. Things need to be okayed and sent and analyzed and drafted. It's just the process is different, which is crazy when you hear the story that I was just, "Hey, do commentary." It's very not that.
Yeah.
I loved it. It was cool. I really enjoyed myself, actually. It was fun. I
don't think you could have a better commentary debut.
I know. That's why I should retire. Perfect record, man.
I would never do commentary again after that. Like, oh, nope. Perfect record here.
I mean, yeah, keep it clean, you know?
Yeah.
The Justin Knipper final bye-bye retirement tour is officially over.
It was quick.
It was a quick one. It was a quick, not as long as Muto's, but it was pretty quick.
Or it was also unplanned.
Unplanned.
But it was cool. It was cool, and it was fun. It was just, you know, it's like if you know your stuff, it's great. I think the harder stuff was calling the non-Noah matches, because they are different brands, and I've helped out with some like Tokyo Joshi and DDT stuff in the past, but it's like there's no overlap really between offices. They're still kept pretty separate, even though we're all under Sanshiro Takagi.
Yeah. Well, that
technically
leads us to a good question then. You know, I've always found it interesting that Noah doesn't work with DDT and TJPW as much. Obviously, the Muto show is different, but and Cyber Fight Festival, which is its own thing. But I feel like most of the time everyone stays separate. I think Noah works a lot with the other Japanese promotions like New Japan, All Japan, Dragon Gate, while DDT and TJPW, they're more likely to work with other companies overseas. As we've seen, DDT works with GCW, TJPW obviously works with AEW. Do you know if that's just how these companies prefer it? Do you think that's because Noah's trying to, work towards the Japanese fans rather than maybe internationally as much? Because we've seen a little AEW crossover, of course, Sting Darby, Timothy Thatcher, but otherwise, like, we know they work together, but not to the point of full on, like, DDT. But hey, I'm happy they're not taking Kaito Kiyomiya. So,
what can I say? The only similarities that the companies have in general are like the financials. Like, it's all coming under the same umbrella. So there's that in common. And backstage people might float in between, but it's just more like, we need extra hands for this. So so it's less like that. DDT, I'm going to leave Tokyo Joshi Pro because Joshi has like there's a different path we can go on that. But with DDT, I can tell you and I guess in general for Tokyo Joshi Pro and women's wrestling in general, DDT is a lot more popular overseas than it is in Japan. DDT is a parody company. DDT has always been pretty much viewed as a parody company. It appeals to a certain crowd in Japan that it's a crowd that would watch Downtown instead of pro wrestling. Downtown's like Saturday Night Live, kind of like late night variety show. And in terms of Japanese humor, a lot of this stuff is really funny. It's hilarious sometimes. Yeah. It's a bit too naked for me sometimes, but hey, whatever. I think they have some. They must have some kind of note on the backstage door that says pants are limited or maybe not allowed tonight. It's like they hate pants, but I digress. The styles are so different, and the fan bases in Japan are so different.
Yeah. Okay.
Of course, there's crossover. Like people, I check out this, I check out that, but more so than over here. If you're a fan of like Noah or DDT, it's like your team. Like this is my style. They represent me. They represent what I think pro wrestling is, and I don't think we'll see much crossover, to be honest. If there was crossover, it would be like one person come, you know what I mean? But
yeah,
not like a joint show. I only see that stuff happening with Cyber Fight Fest, but in general, they're separate brands. It's like I don't know. Yeah, Noah wants to have the view that they're in the mix with not just pro wrestling but like MMA too. It's more leaning towards sport, where DDT leans more towards entertainment with some really high quality, strong style or whatever you call them matches.
Sure.
I saw Brooks and Higuchi from a couple weeks ago, which was phenomenal.
Yeah.
So yeah, the brands are different with Tokyo Joshi Pro. I mean, it's really, really in the early stages with Noah's women's division, but like you said, there's Tokyo Joshi Pro. There's Tokyo Joshi Pro, but I think if anything does happen in Noah with women, it would be women strictly working for Noah and Noah's style. And we've pretty much seen that. I mean, the females that we've seen come through, they're independent, they're freelance, or they do some work for Stardom, but they're not Tokyo Joshi Pro. And it's meant to be kept separate, to keep the brand separate. Yeah. I also think if there's more crossover, I mean, the money would all be going to the same place, right? So then it would be like, it's cool, but I don't know how many other, like how much crossover would you get in general? A little bit, like once a year is good, but if there was more of it, I think it would just be a different flavor. But you never know. Yeah. But with Noah, I think it's going to be more. I probably see them working more with New Japan than like DDT.
Yeah, seems that way. And I mean, I've asked you about the women's stuff multiple times, with TJPW kind of being the big. Well, you have a whole brand that's part of the same, business, but it's not necessarily part of the same company, right? Because Yuka Sakazaki obviously said she's not. If she were to ever come back to Japan, she wouldn't work for a Joshi company. And the first thing I thought of, guess Noah would maybe count for that, because I don't see her jumping ship to say Stardom or anything, because there's a mutual respect there between her and TJPW. But you never know, I guess.
With the Noah women's stuff, it's kind of like it's still really in the early stages and like test stages, so it's hard to say. But I know that there will be probably a different flavor to it, and they do want to have brand separation, like. Okay. And as far as like general fan consensus, Noah fans really don't like TJP because of the style. I mean, Noah fans want hard-hitting pro wrestling.
It's very different.
Yeah, and I mean, but that's also why Tokyo Joshi, as well as DDT, they get over more in the States, because it's actually, even though it's a lot of it's parody wrestling, a lot of it is inspired by American wrestling, so there's more of like a bloodline there. Sanshiro Takagi's so inspired and obsessed with like Attitude Era WWE, like the Booker T Steve Austin grocery store fight. like it's such a massive influence on him, and a lot of like newer people that like grew up watching WWE when it came to Japan in the early 2000s. So
yeah. All right, before we move away from the women's stuff, I will ask you, and we've talked a little bit about this, so I think I know the answer. But if the women's stuff does continue, who's one woman you'd bring in for that division?
Sorry.
Yeah.
That's an easy answer. She's a good free agent right now.
Yeah.
I would oh my gosh. I'm they're like all the names are just overflowing in my head because I think there's so much talent that's not signed to Stardom that are working
Noah's
awesome.
already using them really well.
Hashimoto, and Hiroyo Matsumoto, like all the Sendai girls. Mika Iwata is a big star. Dashi Sako would be huge in the States, I think.
I do too.
Hardcore style.
I do too.
And even I watched that Sariism show, and there were like 2 younger girls in that opening match. Riko Kaiju.
Yeah,
She's
and
good.
Eureka Oka. Yeah.
They were good. I like that. I like the more hard. Oh, and Michiko Miyagi. She used to be Andreas Miyagi, and
she's in Glate now,
Glate.
I think.
Yep, she's fantastic. I mean, there's Rem Kaichao, if we could, get
She's
her
very popular.
locked up. I think she's technically freelancer still, but I don't know. But there's so much talent that like I would go to these shows back in the day and it would be like 30 people. It's so weird to see, but they come to the States, they can perform in front of a couple thousand. So that's also like, that's the thing, to go back to the earlier question about like the difficulties with like people will value different things in Japan and the States.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not even about right and wrong. It's just like, if someone doesn't care about this and they want that, and it's the opposite on the other side, that's even more difficult because it's not about emotions or what you believe or what, it's just how it is. And we have to figure out how we can make it work and bring it all together. And again, that goes, especially with women's wrestling. I think that without commentary, without even any explanation, you get such an explosive experience. Like Sari and Hashimoto from that show I was talking about. Yeah. You don't got to know anything about wrestling. That's just awesome. I mean, it was just they're just so good, and they show their heart, and that is the way to connect it. But how do you do that? It takes time. It takes a lot of time.
It does.
So
you talked about like people being popular in the States. Do you see at any point Noah trying to run a show in the States, or at the very least doing some sort of showcase something in America?
First part of your question, I can answer flat out no. There's nothing planned, and the main reason behind that is, from what I've been told, Noah doesn't want to run any shows outside of Japan unless they can use the same Abema production that they use in Japan.
That makes sense.
That's fair.
That's Noah feel.
And to add just to clear of that, that's one thing that people have complained about, like the New Japan US things, is that TV Asahi doesn't, they do the production in Japan, they don't do it in America.
It's ugly.
You said
I saw that New York City match, that New York City thing they did last year. It's like, it's just a bummer for fans because that's a big step. That's a gap in quality. So it and the visual, the whole aesthetic. I know the kids love to use the word aesthetic these days, but the aesthetic of Noah right now with Abema is really one of the key points of bringing new people in, just because it looks so damn good.
Yeah.
I mean, It was amazing. I got to see the kind of backstage, headquarters where they run all the hundreds of monitors where they're running the show.
Yes.
I mean, it's a big freaking operation.
Yes.
It's so that's the main reason why in the immediate future there will probably be no Noah shows. Showcases and all that. That's awesome. I've pitched a lot of stuff, but it's just not. A lot of the stuff has to do with visas, and that. But there are new opportunities too, because the United States has this new group entertainers visa. I don't know if you guys know about, but there's a little inside baseball, but like there's a company, Masked Republic, I believe, or Republic of Lucha. I think
is that the
they're also
is that the
I think it's the Lucha Bros company.
It's all there's a lot of different elements there, but they're also doing a talent agency mainly for the luchadors.
Yes,
I think we
talked about it on the show when that happened.
Maybe like a year, like 6 months ago, like late last year,
something like that. It's ultimately how like Vikingo came into the States, if I recall.
That's right. It's also what got a few Noah guys on to some West Coast shows last year. Marufuji, Nakajima, yeah, I think that was it on Noah's side, but it was all kind of included. Yeah. So I mean, something like that would be awesome, but it's just like scheduling. Do the people above me want to do it? If so, that would take a lot of planning, and things are kind of focused on Japan right now.
Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely fatigue after February. I mean, that it felt like, oof, and I think, that kind of served as like a cyber fight fest for the year. Yeah. Between that and like altogether again is more New Japan production though. So it's more like Noah's talent's going to be on the show, but Noah's not. We're not really involved.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, okay. So say the opportunity did come for a showcase match, right? Just to make fans here in America. You'd pick two guys. What's the match you do?
I guess it depends on where or which crowd.
Sure.
But I mean,
say an AW crowd, maybe.
Let's just say pick a random city. Seems like
that's a great.
People love that town nowadays.
That's a good wrestling town. I mean, you could do something like Nakajima and Kano, right?
Yeah.
But my ideal would be I really want to show Kiyomiya.
Yes.
I don't think people realize how good he is. He is like a modern day, like a Sting, he has so much natural babyface energy.
Yeah.
Like people think he's like a messiah in Japan or something. Like they love him, and he's got a good heart. I think he just needs to be seen, and he needs to be in the right setting. Yeah. But the thing with Kiyomiya is like I don't know who I would want to put him with somebody from outside of Noah.
Okay,
sure.
Because when you because he's somebody who he works a lot of different styles. Actually, in ways he's a lot like Okada. Like he can have different kinds of matches. I'd want to put him with somebody like, I don't know, Wheeler Yuta.
Oh, interesting.
Or even Bryan Danielson, somebody like that. But I mean, that's like cheating, though. You can put Danielson in anything; it's good. But like somebody who's around the same age and maybe has like more clout as well. Sure. I think he would actually tear it down with somebody like Jonathan Gresham.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I think those guys like that are technically sound, but also they've got personality and fire.
Yeah,
that's what he has too, just in a different way. He's more fundamentally perfect. A lot of people say he has this like photogenic memory where he can see something and just do it exactly the same. It's like he bumps in a perfectly symmetrical way all the time. He's very safe. Everything is picture perfect. So I'd like to see how that would blend with somebody else from States or that company WXW. They have lots of really interesting, hard-hitting guys too.
Yep.
So I want people to realize how good Kiyomiya actually is, and I think it's so silly that people think, well, he lost, so he must suck. I don't know what It's like, do I even bother even trying to? It's just wait and see. Just wait and see. I'm that confident on it.
Well, we sort of talked about also that the international audience and bringing new talent into Noah. As someone who works in the PR department, what are some of the challenges that you think you face in showcasing the new unknown talent that Noah brings in every once in a while? Last year, for instance, Noah brings in Jack Morris into the N1 tournament, a guy out of Scotland. We talked to him. We interviewed him on our show. And the internet obviously said reacted immediately like, who the hell is this guy? So what does it go into in your world of showcasing someone that seemingly is an unknown guy into this Noah tournament?
Jack is a good example because I don't know if you guys, I don't know if you guys saw about a year ago, there was like an advertisement. It was like a bounty hunter advertisement. Yeah.
I had a question about it.
Well, I mean, that's how Jack got hired.
Yeah.
He sent his stuff in. That's how I got hired. But I did something a little different. That's for another time, but I did not offer. I did not offer to wrestle or anything like that.
You are Noah Fett, as I like to call it.
I don't know if the things get more dire. I might have to break out Noah Fett. But so with Muto and his appearance, it was a success financially for the company. There was more money to experiment with talent, and he was brought in. There were some other issues too. Another wrestler. There was an opening, and also somebody got injured too. So there was an opening, and they brought him in. I wasn't familiar with Jack either. We came in right around the same time, but
yeah,
a lot of it was, it's a gamble. And that was last year, though. There's no Muto this year, so it's a little more. What we did this year, well, I guess starting last year, there was a big tryout in San Jose.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's how we got Sean Legacy. But that's like a new, new system. It's Marufuji is really involved in that.
Okay.
But it's like a new way of recruiting because there's no overseas dojo. The dojo up there, it's not like open like the LA dojo for New Japan is here now.
Mm-hmm.
It's just different. So for new talent, I think there's a focus on trying to bring up your new young Noah talent that belongs to Noah. Like there's this fellow Taishi Ozawa who started last September. He's an athletic freak, but he's still really new. He's really great. If you saw the match, he had the opening match last night where he lost in brief fashion to Manabu Soya. But again, that's what happens when you're a rookie. You lose. You lose hard sometimes. Sometimes you eat a shit sandwich. But I think the philosophy is slowly but surely building up one or two guys at a time. But with foreigners, that again, trial. It's trial periods and what works and what doesn't. A lot of the times it's not just about the talent, but it's also about the person's international visa ability.
Yeah.
Sometimes there have been things that like cool things that happen, but it's just paperwork and visa stuff is what got in the way. It's always a lot less exciting when you find out like, oh, what's the deal with this? What happened? You look and you see what happened and it's like, really? it's just a bummer. Like last year, Thatcher couldn't do the N1, and it wasn't his fault. Mm-hmm. There was a huge surge in COVID, and the offices, like all government offices, were just flooded and understaffed. And his stuff came in, but it just came in too late for a tour, and that sucked because we reported it and all, but it's kind of like the psychology of a fan is like if they don't see it, it's like you're dead.
Yeah.
And stuff like that happens a lot when you're dealing with international situation, especially when it's Japan. When it's Canada and Mexico, when you could talk to border people like face to face, it's a different game. Mm-hmm. But it's such a production, so these things really need to be like planned out long in advance and for X amount of time because of visa limitations. Are they going to be on a visa for 3 months? Are they on for a year?
Yeah.
So that'll always be an issue, good or bad. But it's something that I wish fans would take a little more time to just realize that it's not just, hey, come over and get in the ring. There's a lot of just BS as performers that they need to go through just because that's the game. Those are the rules. So sometimes it's just a not exciting bummer why someone could or couldn't come and make it to a show.
Yeah.
But it's always something we'll kind of have to get around.
Yeah, for sure. I guess one of our last questions here, and I think this will kind of open it up. We talked about Jack Morris kind of getting some big spots recently, and I think Sean Legacy's on the way there. What chances would you like to see Noah take in this post-Muto era? As we've seen, Jake Lee's on top of the world. That feels like one of the biggest chances they could have taken, right? He walked in from All Japan, who, I think most of us agree at this point, All Japan's below Noah, but he's a guy who's very popular with, the female demographic, especially. I think if and I've heard you talk about that a little bit, I'm hit or miss on Jake Lee personally, but I understand the chance that's being taken here. So, like, what are some chances you would like to see? How do you feel about Jake Lee as GHC heavyweight champion as well?
Well, I'll talk about Jake Lee at first. I love Jake Lee, and this will lead into the answer that you initially asked for. But Jake Lee is another great example of someone who is way, way more over in Japan than overseas.
Yeah.
And it's very much because of the new internal like characteristics that really turn people on because of him. And first of all, the good-looking guys thing, it's because ladies are obsessed with this man. Even when he was in All Japan, when he was wearing like the melon-colored shorts, I remember he was in some like a FHM kind of magazine, like like a women's I don't know, women's culture. Like he was in those. He's like he has a K-pop look with the build of like Okada. He's a big dude. The way he talks in Japanese, he can speak English pretty well. And he speak Korean too. But in Japanese, he has a lot more personality and flavor than a lot of the Noah roster, which is a little more sports, a little more like jock responses, rhetoric. Yeah, I'll do my best next time. Thanks. That's a lot. That I just translated a lot of Japanese promos for you right now. You're not. It's just pretty. It's what it is. It's all it needs to be. Jake is really nuanced. He's really calm. People like that he's calm. I don't hear Americans ever say, I like this wrestler because he has a calm personality. It's just a taste thing. So what needs to be done is, I think, on commentary, we got to get him over more. We got to call his moves that are a big part of those stories. Like the backdrop was massive. Like it was his killer move when he was in Old Japan, and the history of the backdrop in Japanese pro wrestling, that move means so much more in Japan than over here. It was the move that Luthez beat Rikidozan with. Oh my God, backdrop. So I think there needs to be, his move set is also very, like we were talking about with Muto and Kiyomiya last year. It's that style where it's very, very pieced together, connected, and the moves, they're not maybe as flashy as Ray Phoenix, but they mean something in that moment. And it's this whole story that's being built right now. He keeps talking about, how do you say it like in English? He's trying to absorb or learn everyone's history. Almost think of it like Shang Tsung taking somebody's soul and becoming them. That's my take on it. It's not exactly, he's not really taking their soul, but when he beat Marufuji, when he beat Kiyomiya and Nakajima, he's like taking elements of them and he's trying to put it into who he is as a wrestler. And that kind of stuff, it needs to either be verbalized or just more. We need to explain more and more. Chances taking the Noah office that we should take is just to try to reach out and try to do things to get guys like Jake Lee over and realize that now we're on an international platform now. We're on the podium and it's international. Now it's a double-edged sword. I love how Japanese Noah is, but it can also be isolating to people who don't get it.
Yeah.
So in a bigger sense, take more chances internationally, from bigger things like showcases or whatever to just, advertising and catch copy and those. I think the chances that we need to take shouldn't be small chances, should be bigger chances.
Yeah.
And because I think they've got a lot of momentum early on this year.
Yeah.
And Nakamura did a lot for this company. Sting, Darby, that was big show. Like there was big stuff that happened.
Yeah.
So I think if we're ever going to take any chance, this year is a good time to start planning that. Because, momentum, it fades out, man. Momentum in wrestling fades within weeks. You could be on top of the world and then you could be forgotten because
there's so much.
There's so much being thrown at us, and like it or not, as Americans, I feel like I can say we're trend whores. It's just what we are. It's much different from Europe, and it's different from Japan because of the nature of the industry here, where it's just fucking pounding content out, pounding shows out.
Thanks, WWE.
Yeah, but double-edged sword.
It's
for
working.
Some people,
it's working for them. It is. They're making money.
And to be honest, I hear a lot more people are satisfied with WWE than non-WWE stuff these days too.
Sure, it's true.
So it's all about that flow. So taking a chance also is based on the momentum flow of the moment and being aware of that. And it's hard to be aware when you're in two countries that are far away from each other. So I don't know if that's a good answer, because it's not very direct, because I don't know exactly. But I would love to see more Noah talent over in the States if we can make it happen on like a realistic note. It's just it's a lot of non-wrestling stuff that gets in the way.
Yep.
So
sure.
Well, this interview is going to be coming out the Sunday before Green Journey Nagoya. I feel like we would be remiss if we didn't talk to you about that show. Happening on June 17th. Top of the card, we have the aforementioned Jake Lee defending his GHC heavyweight title versus Takeshi Sugiura. We also have Huxley and Thatcher defending their titles against Masaki Miura and Yoshiki Inamura. And we also have Kongo versus Axis. What are your sort of expectations and excitement for this show?
I'm stoked for the main event. I think people are sleeping on it. I think people will sleep on it. Sugiura turned 53 last night.
I was like 30. Whoa.
Yeah, he looks like he's in his 30s.
Yeah.
He looks, he's amazing. I think people are going to sleep on that, but they shouldn't.
Mm-hmm. I think it's Jake Lee's best match. I'm calling it now.
That's a lot to say, because that Marufuji match he had was really, I thought that was his best so far, but
I think it was too.
And I'm happy Jake Lee's working with people like Sugiura instead of younger people, because I want him to be able to, working with those more experienced guys, he's going to learn a lot more and employ that later on. And that should be good. There's some stuff happening right before Green Journey too. I know that the junior heavyweight tag is on the line against the new Stinger duo, which is a really pretty fire duo of Chris Ridgway and Daga. I thought both of them are looking really good these days. We're gonna go
Hard
against
to follow Stinger's current
standing. I can't speak much to that, but this is the Rudos Stingers.
Yeah.
This week's lineup. Story aside, the in-ring will be absolutely fantastic. There were some other matches that were just announced like last night, so I have to recheck some of them, but it should be good, and it'll be on Wrestle Universe, English commentary and all that good stuff. But and I believe that, I don't know when, but soon we'll get some N1 announcements for the summer.
Oh, that's exciting.
The tickets are going on sale soon. I got the list of all the venues. We're about to, launch that promotion soon too. So things are gearing up, and I think the next big story we'll see some very interesting stuff at N1. Interesting combinations, I'm sure. So
I know there's sort of rumors and reports being floated out there literally hours before we started recording, and I won't necessarily ask you to confirm those or not. Do you expect those N1 participant announcements to come sooner rather than later?
I wouldn't be surprised if they were announced in July instead of June, but I'm not sure.
All right.
It depends on the schedule, and it depend. I don't think everything in the N1 is finalized. So
sure.
Just the venues and ticket sales, those are just getting finalized, but soonish.
Okay.
All right.
August is the month, so and there's going to be another big show in July. So between now and July, you should hear more and more stuff.
That makes sense. Well, again, thank you so much, Justin, for coming on to the show. We greatly appreciate you coming on here. We obviously very much appreciate it. But I would be remiss to say before you go is that, we're interviewing you. We did an interview with Jack Morris, and, you obviously have people in the back office. what do Scotty and I have to do to become Noah bounty hunters? How do we collect that 300K? You know, what do we got to do to get to that platform? You know.
Well, firstly, I should let you know, like I haven't gotten a 300K yet, so I don't know where it is. I mean, do whatever you'd like, but I can't guarantee you 300K is at the end of the tunnel. I don't know if the bounty hunter program is still happening, but
don't worry about it.
I don't know.
Don't worry about it.
All I can tell you is I have definitely not seen $300,000. Not yet.
That's
but,
fair. That's fair.
I was going to say maybe someday, but I'm
not gonna get your hopes up.
Well,
I just want to say on the record, I'm fully compensated. I'm very happy.
Perfect. Well,
I'm not complaining about pay.
You may not have gotten
300K would be nice.
You may have not gotten that 300K bounty yet, but it did get you a job with Noah, and it brought a bunch of other guys into Noah. So I think that at the very least is you don't get the one shot, but you do get a year-long's journey with Noah here. So I think that's definitely a good enough reward, I would say.
I say ask Jack Morris where that $300,000 is.
I'm going to. I want to talk to him. I would love to talk to him. This is like an off mic thing, probably, but no, we're still recording, so I'm not gonna say it's off mic. I want to talk to him again, just like to do like a year after we first interviewed him as like a roundup, after a year in Noah, especially. And I'm gonna straight up ask him like, "Hey man, where'd that money go? What's happening over here?"
It's been less than a year for him, and I'm really happy for like how he went from, like you said, a lot of people were on I didn't know him either, to not only getting over like gangbusters, but he also has a very what's a good word? Aggressive or die-hard fan base of females.
Yes.
Who enjoy.
Have you seen them?
3% body fat. That son of a gun.
Sounds high.
Yeah.
His match with Wagner Jr. was
fantastic.
That was the. I wouldn't say breakout performance. I think he had breakout performances before that, but that was
the Jake Lee one at the very beginning. That was breakout performance. Obviously, it was an upset win, but that was a breakout perforance for me.
Oh, you mean Kiyomiya?
Yes, Kiyomiya.
Oh,
yes, thank you.
The first match, wasn't it?
Yes.
The first match?
Yeah.
Yes.
First match in Noah, first match in the N1. He wins. So again, that's another great detail. I mean, he beat Kiyomiya when Kiyomiya was on a skid, and he beat him with Tiger Driver, which is very meaningful in pro wrestling Noah. All that stuff means something. Mm-hmm. And I guarantee that if he'll be in the N1 this year, all of that stuff that happened last year will be brought back, and it'll be a part. It's his story now.
Oh yeah,
he's another one that's like I'm very confident in, like, just let him do his thing. He was good, and he's gotten so much better.
Yeah,
like since it's a acute improvement. So
yeah,
part of Jack.
We were waving the flag for Jack Morris over here because we were like looking at the Wrestle Kingdom schedule and sort of the Noah schedule. And we we're like, ooh, Kaito Kiyomiya versus Jack Morris right before the Okada match. If there's a good shot, maybe Jack Morris can win it here. Maybe Kiyomiya's eye is off the ball. I don't know. I think Jack Morris got a shot.
That's fair. That's very fair to say. Jack Morris is a thorn in Kiyomiya's side, an unexpected Scottish thorn. So I hope you were waving that Scottish flag for him.
I was doing my best. I was doing my best down here in Georgia, I gotta get that bounty. Well, thank you, Justin, for joining us so much.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure having you. Where can people find you?
On Twitter, I'm at Justin M. Knipper, Knipper. And if you are interested in Noah business inquiries and such, I'm at release@noah.co.jp.
And if anyone needs you for commentary, you are officially retired, so that don't ask.
Oh, if they have 300K, I'll maybe come out of retirement. That's the only. It goes from this, and then the finances have to meet up with the Tokyo Dome. Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah, if anybody is interested in commentary, let me know. 300K is my fee.
Or the Tokyo Dome, either one.
I think I'm done with that one. I checked that one. I'll leave you with a fun story before we left. I am so happy that I got to do this. I was so proud of it. I got to take a whiz in the Yomiuri Giants dugout during the show. I alone. And I knew when I could do it too. It was like a 6-hour show, and I knew that the Amakusa Hiromu Takahashi, I knew that the VTR was 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I knew I would have time to run to the restroom, and I ran to the restroom, and I was in the dugout relieving myself. And I looked at the English language sign of P dehydration. There's a chart.
Yeah.
A color chart. I was relatively dehydrated.
Well, talk about being a relief pitcher.
Hey, that was good.
That was a good one.
Oh man,
that's
give
one
this
of your
guy
better
300K.
Well, again, thank you very much for coming on the show, Justin. And we thank you all for listening to this. And we'll see you all next time for Ring Post Radio. See ya.
So, Curtis.
Yeah, man.
Canart said we've got to do an ad. I've never done one before. What should we do?
I have no idea, bro. I ever made an ad before. What do we do an ad for?
I don't know. We just say we're like a New Japan Pro Wrestling podcast, and we just put a bunch of clips like here.
Arguably the most shredded guy. So if you really want to get there too.
Maybe a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Heard that here. Michael Richards calling Jay White small compared to him. Here.
I love it. This picture you've painted for me. I want to hang it up. I want to frame it and hang it up in my bedroom.
Yeah.
We don't have a WWE tryout or a New Japan tryout every second week, and now I'm in Bullet Club.
And here?
Will Ospreay versus Kenny Omega. Do you want to just go off about this match?
How do you take or talk about one of, I think, probably the best matches you've ever seen? That's an ad, right?
Yeah, that works. That's brilliant, because then all our work's already been done for us and we don't have to do anything.
Aha, past us did it. Present us living in the now.
Look at us.
Look
at
that.
us being friggin' brilliant.
Mate, minimum effort, maximum output. Okada Shorts podcast. Check it out on the Countout Network at Okada Shorts. Rate and subscribe, listen or die.
This has been a Count Out Podcast.